A very good afternoon, everyone. So welcome to Poetry Festival Singapore. And thank you for coming to this session of Meet the Poets who are shortlisted for the Singapore Literature Prize 2022, which is organized by the Singapore Book Council. Now, I'm Ao Yong Wai Kit from Poetry Festival Singapore, and I'm also a writer and teacher. I will be moderating the session for today. Now, before we begin, I'd like to thank, of course, our program partner, Poetry Festival Singapore, for their generous support of the Singapore Literature Prize. And the Singapore Literature Prize is a biennial competition open to Singapore citizens and permanent residents whose works of fiction, poetry, and creative non-fiction have been published in Singapore or abroad in all the 4 official languages, that is English, Chinese, Malay, or Tamil. And it's supported by Arts House Limited and sponsored by CLASS. Now, before we begin, of course, I'd like to introduce you to all our esteemed poets who are here this afternoon for this very first session, and just to welcome them to this special reading, which involves an individual reading as well as a group sharing thereafter. So here are, of course, our poets, and together we would have Imba. So just to perhaps just wave to all our online and offline audiences, in-person audiences. Imba, all right, Mr. Lee Hock Ming, right, Li Fuming Xiao Shou, and Kai Chai, right, and Yu Fan.
Hello.
So allow me to just introduce everyone in turn, just a brief introduction. So we will have Imba first, and Imba won the Golden Point Award in 2009 and the Mustame Viha Prize a few times, as well as the Kavimanam Poetry Competition Prize. And next we will have Li Hock Ming, right? Li Fuming Xiao Shou, who is a professor at the Beijing Institute of Technology, Zhuhai, teaching classical and contemporary Chinese literature. And Kai Chai, who is a poet, fiction writer, and editor, and also a co-editor of Quarterly Literary Review Singapore. He was the festival director, of course, for the Singapore Writers' Festival from 2015 to 2018. And Yu Fan is the vice president of the Singapore Literature and Art Association, editor of the Singapore Literature and Art newspaper. Right. So perhaps if we could invite Imba first, right, to share with us a reading. Yeah. So each speaker will have around 7 minutes. So if you could share with us from your works, and of course our speakers will be reading in either English or their mother tongues, right? So perhaps just to share some of the works that you've particularly shortlisted for the Singapore Literature Prize. So Imba, please.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for the quick introduction. This is the book that have been shortlisted for a poetry category, and this is my 5th poetry book that I have published. Straight away, I think I can go ahead to read my poem.
Sure.
Okay, so the poem that I'm going to read now, can I stand? I think it's the better.
Sure.
Okay, so the poem is actually talks about crossing the street is not so easy. Okay, so unfortunately there is no Tamil audience here, so I have to translate to you in English as much as I can. Okay, so the poem title is "Inda Salayai Kadappadu Elidalla," which means crossing the street is not easy. Okay. இந்த சாலையை எதிர்கொள்வது அவ்வளவு கடினமாக இருக்கின்றது. தெருவுக்குள் நுழையும் போதே கால்கள் தடுமாறுகின்றன. Facing this street is so difficult. My foot stumbles when they enter into this street. எதிரில் வருபவனை கண்டால் காதல் வயப்பட்டது போல்தான் தெரிகிறது. நேற்றிரவு இங்கு இவன் உறங்கி இருக்கக்கூடும். பெருங்காமத்தை இங்கே கவிழ்த்திருக்கக்கூடும். ஓரிரவு காதலனாக இருந்திருக்கக்கூடும். It looks like the guy who passes by fell in love with someone. He might have slept last night here, could have been a one-night lover to someone. திருப்தி பெறாத ஆண்மை தீர்ந்திருக்கக்கூடும். மோகத்தில் உளறிய வார்த்தைகள் தெருவெங்கும் சிதறி கிடக்கக்கூடும். முத்தங்கள் கலந்த பெருங்காற்று முகத்தில் வீசி அடிக்கக்கூடும். An unsatisfied masculinity might have satisfied. His lovable words and the lovely kisses might be scattered all over the street. It might blow in your face. கசங்கிய ஆடைகளுக்கு மத்தியில் மல்லிகை திரவியம் பூசியிருக்கக்கூடும். தெருவோர தூணில் சாய்ந்தபடி தளிர் உடல்கள் வழியெங்கும் நிற்கின்றன. Jasmine perfume for dirty clothes may be quoted. She is leaning on the roadside pillar. Scatter, stand all the way. பகலில் கூட எங்காவது 2 முதுகெலும்புகள் சடசடவென முணங்கிக் கொண்டிருக்கும் சாலை இது. இந்த சாலையில் புழுக்கத்தை, இறுக்கத்தை, தனிமையை விலக்கிவிட்டு திரும்பிச் செல்கிறார்கள். This is the street where 2 spines are humming somewhere even during the daytime. Bump on this road, tightness, loneliness, they withdraw and go back again. சிறு சிறு சந்தோஷங்கள் முடிப்பதும் அவிழ்ப்பதுமாய் தனது நாடகத்தை நிகழ்த்தி கொண்டிருக்கும் இந்த சாலையில் நடப்பது, இந்த சாலையை கடப்பது அவ்வளவு எளிதல்ல. With a small tiny happiness finishing and unraveling, the street performing its play, walking on this street, crossing this street is not so easy for me. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Imba.
Thank you.
I think we can definitely think of the sheer metaphor of that in terms of we're crossing the street in so many ways like that, and really to hear, right, like from your perspectives, and we definitely want to delve more into that later, right? Yes. Oh, I think we already have rich responses, right?
Should have more
to add on. Yeah. So we definitely.
Yeah, I didn't mention what is a street name, so it could be understood above. Yeah. So as a woman who pass by a street such that it is so difficult, it's not easy. There are a lot of people passing by, even though as a woman, as a family woman with the Indian cultural background, passing a street such is very difficult for me. So that's my own personal feeling that I reflected in the poem. Yeah.
Like meaning even just crossing the street in Singapore anywhere. Really.
Not the particular street which I
that
mentioned.
Particular street that you mentioned, right? Okay. Right, because I think these are the experiences I think that really should be shared with a wider audience. So yeah, definitely later if you could share more elaborate about that during our Q&A. I think that would be something we'd like to hear from. Right, so perhaps if we could, we would just continue with our readings first before we come back. Yeah. So now, of course, to invite Hok Ming, right? So Li Jiao Shou.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me here. This is the book that is shortlisted in the SLP. It's a very small book. Maybe it's the smallest book to be shortlisted in this competition. Right? Okay. Because I'm trying to use my poetry to explain the meaning of Chinese character when it was created or it was formed in this ancient oracle bone inscription or the Chinese bronze inscription. So I need to show you some slide to explain the ancient Chinese words. Okay, the first one, sorry, I need to stand up. The first poems I want to share is actually 小满. 小满, I read in Chinese first. 山小小的骄傲，一排一排一排，直直直立，只学会向上开口。他们都不明白，真正的高必须把门口开向群众最底层啊。This is the word that we can see at the moment is the sun, the present writing. In fact, in this oracle bone inscription, it was written in this way. And then the cow is actually where is it? Okay, this is actually the picture, and then this is 甲骨文 the bone inscription, and this is the Jingwen bronze inscription, different one. So I've translated into English because, and this is the only one that I have done it. So it's because 小满 is actually a 节气 in the 在24节气里面，其中一个节气其实是 grain box mountain standing a little proudly, column by column, with mouth opening to the top ranking 就是这个山只会向上开口嘛，只会对向上。其实最真正的高明的是要把这个嘴巴开向最底层 就是 they just don't understand the meaning of tall is to open the door to the bottom all 啊，就是你要对群众开口才是真正的高，其实不然你就是向上拍马屁啊，大概是这个意思啊。所以这个是啊。然后我要介绍我的第二首诗，叫《夜半钟声到客船》啊，船啊 ，this actually is the pictograph version of this 船啊。I read in Chinese first. 空钟声，空 is actually to symbolize the sound of the bell. 空 right? So it's also the philosophy of Buddhism. 空
emptiness.
Yes, emptiness. Yeah. 钟声停泊在满天飞霜，一杆老旧砬砺，蓦然吊响实际的寒江雪。The idea of this poetry was actually adopted from two Tang Dynasty poems. One of them is 枫桥夜泊。熟悉中文古典诗的人应该都知道哈，月落乌啼霜满天啊。But I'm not going to read this Tang Dynasty poetry to you. I'm going to sing it for you because there is a Taiwanese composer write these songs in Hokkien dialect. 他用福建方言写了这首诗，把它谱成曲啊。我尝试用我这个沙哑的声音唱一下啊。In Hokkien 啊 ，Hokkien 会听有无？听有哈，我听有就会使哈。月落乌啼霜满天，江风嬉戏对笑面，姑苏声歌寒山寺，夜半钟声到客船。Something like that. Okay, and then this is actually also this poetry is actually also a 图像诗啊 It's actually a calligrams because this is 这个是水平面 This is the water level, and then this is the sail of the boat. It's a sailing boat, and then this is the mirror image on the water. So 这是帆啊，这是那个船，这是水面，它其实也是一首图像诗啊。那它这个主要就是呢，满天飞霜这些是来自这个诗啊，但是后面的寒江雪呢，是来自这首唐诗啊，就是千山鸟飞绝，小学生都会背的这个啊，不是新加坡小学生，新加坡大概要高中以后才会读这个诗，丢人啊
，even memorized by
千山鸟飞绝啊 ，There is also a song composed by me, not Taiwanese composer anymore. 千山鸟飞绝，万径人踪灭。孤舟蓑笠，独钓寒江雪。Okay, this is a song composed by me. Okay, and then do I have any more time?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Then I go to next poetry. 这是另外一首诗，叫《夕阳》啊，就是夕阳 sunsetting 啊，这个 evening sun。So in this oracle bone inscription, this is on the left side is actually the mountain, and then the right hand side, some looks like birds. Right? This is actually the sun, the circle, and then this is actually a table that they used to put something on the table and pray the sun 啊。就是一个祭坛啊，用来祭拜这个太阳的。Left hand side is the mountain, and then 这就是一只鸟啊。Because in ancient Chinese, they call 太阳 they call the sun 金乌 It's actually a golden bird, something like that 啊。So then I write in Chinese 啊 I read in Chinese. 山边太阳被时间泼下，丝丝金线啊。This is the 丝丝金线啊。OK。不舍得一一垂挂，传说的神鸟昏昏欲醉啊 ！This is the bird, the 神鸟。No more time.
No,
still got. Oh, okay.
Yes, sure.
Is it? I can see the time now.
Yeah.
Okay, then I will carry on. Yeah. Okay. 这是一首诗叫《瞻》哈。It's actually also adopted from Tang Dynasty poetry. 鹳雀楼啊，就是白日依山尽，黄河入海流。欲穷千里目 I think I could know this poetry, right?
This is
更上一层楼啊。
It's a famous Tang poem.
Yeah. 欲穷千里目. Actually, I try to find a word that to describe the two sentences from this Tang Dynasty poetry. So I found a word called zhan, because the zhan is quite interesting. Actually, this is the eye on top, and then this is the mouth below. So I write a poetry. 嘴巴躲在最下面, the mouth always hide below. 光说不练, talk a lot but never do anything. 高瞻远瞩的眼睛, that the eyes can see above level. That means see far away. 在鹳雀楼上默默拾级而上. 这个又是一个图像啊，拾级图上应该是这么读的，拾级而上. You climb the ladder. So it's actually a picture also 啊，所以这个是用来嘲笑那些光说不练的人啊。所以呢，这就是我的诗啊。然后我们再看一下，处处闻啼鸟，又是一首唐诗啊。春眠不觉晓啊 ，another Chinese is another classical poem from Tang Dynasty。处处闻啼鸟啊，其中一句啊。所以门里 ，because the 小篆里面写这个文呐，这个是一个门 ，it's actually the door, and then this is the ear inside the door 啊 ，so you hear that you're listening to something inside the door， 所以门里酣睡耳朵啊，装满了梦境外边的鸟声啊 ，because one of the writing of this 文啊 you can see from here, this is the ear, and this looks like a bird. So I'm trying to use all the pictograph elements of this ancient Chinese character to create some poetry, contemporary poetry. This is what I've done for the past few years. Okay. 经济预测 this is actually I think it's an election, a general election. And I went to this one of the opposition party there and they listen to them what they talk. They say they talk a lot. They also talk a lot, never do anything. So there is a poetry called 仓.
Although we are above politics, of course, yeah.
所谓仓，太阳底下说大话. You see, the Chinese character 仓 is very interesting. On top is the sun, but below is actually the mouth. You talk under the sun, but the mouth is bigger than the sun. How can it be, right? So you talk a lot, you give a lot of sunshine to the public, but you do anything. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Prof. Lee. 谢谢李教授. I think there's so much meaning that's encapsulated in just individual pictograms, and also, like, of course, in terms of the shape poetry, I think there's much that poets of all language traditions can really relate to, like this. So thank you so much, Prof. Lee. Right. So next, if we can invite Kai Chai, right, to share, and yes, if you could share about your works, especially for the SLP, Kai Chai, please.
So I'm very intrigued by Prof. Lee. I think the first character is Gao, which is like a tower. So my collection is called One to the Dark Tower Comes, and I'm obsessed with towers or any kind of a contraption. So One to the Dark Tower Comes, the title came from Charles Roland to the Dark Tower came a Robert Browning poem, which is also based on King Lear and everything. So the idea of the Dark Tower to me is the lighthouse in the Virginia Woolf, the kind of place that you want to reach, but you can never reach. By the time you reach there, you don't know what you get at the end. So to me, it's a metaphor for all kinds of desires, ambitions, fears, hopes that we all have. And then by the time you reach the door, what's behind the door? Yeah, so it's kind of philosophical, but yeah. So the first poem I'm going to read is called Quarterly Report Number 1, Advanced Water Treatment Plant. After all that's been said and done, there's always the unnamable sense of loss after the flood. Despite our historical efforts with the hacking, piping, retiling, and varnishing, if X equals Y, the mirror lake in one's dream, and that in turn reflects the fear of drowning in another stranger, then X is the all-consuming waving yet drowning. The action in inaction and vice versa, depending on the splashback and economic. Thanks. These are, after all, daily waters that trickle, stir, froth, evaporate, pay dividends, whether one pays attention or not. Wind or no wind, sometimes above the surface, other times a dangerous undertow, seepage through silent cement. Two characters on separate buoys in the same lake, absorbed in a cycle of routine activities, paddling, floating, laughing, sunbathing. Then the clouds gather like the best intentions. The dog vanished one morning, and we never knew what happened to it. Did it leave us, or was it snatched right in front of our porch? Still, getting to the other side of the lake, it's now done never X, is the quest for all from nudists to nincompoops. If by reaching there, X turns out to be less than or equal to Y, the hero we've always dreamt of becoming, and we are in turn less than or equal to the father of all heroes, then X is either less than or equal to the transcendental sheen. Someone cries woof, but really, the expectational adjustment is part of the ancient filtration system. After all, who would know what's on the other side unless one takes the leap of faith? So far, no one has returned from Zagged. And if they say they did, who would believe them? And is the bubbling water fit for drinking? It's okay, it's okay. It's okay, it's okay. I feel better. Holding it as a shield. My hand's shaking, but it's okay. So the next poem I'm going to read is part of a series of 8 poems with the same title called A Slit from Sternum to Pitzel. I think some readers notice it's actually the art of butchery of, butchers when they cut open pigs and farm animals. So a slit from sternum to pitzel to me is a metaphor when you cut yourself open and you let your entrails be seen by everyone. So this poem is a kind of one-size-fits-all summation of human civilization, sort of. It sounds pretty pretentious, but there you go. On this unerring field where man and beast of burden have carefully hoisted the beams of the day, sling blades glint in ductile sun, upward cleavers we are stacked one above the other, via sprockets, winders, and hydraulics, cranked to tensile strength. There are just too many of us down here, sick of the earth, standing up for the very first time. Our hands free at last. Now we'll do what we want to do. Even space isn't enough to keep us apart now, sizing each other up with sickle and rope. Left and right, right and wrong, sides of the same cleft. Together each girder treads past through present, trust to a future triangle. Today, sands and papers have covered any trace of us ever being here, except for echoes ripping through mausoleum of fear. Thank you.
Thank you, Kachan.
Okay, I'll read one last
more? Sure.
one.
Yes, your time for that.
I think it should be just about right. So the last one is called Quarterly Report Number 7, Epiphytes and Vertebral Control. It's in memory of adult film actress Kairuhak. So Kairuhak is this French porn actress who made an art house film, and she presented it at Cannes Festival. And she wanted to address the idea of misogyny and also the position of porn actresses. And she was laughed at, she was ridiculed. Because the film was, I saw it, it was really, there was nothing fake about it. Yeah, so, but she was ridiculed and she killed herself 2 years later. So this poem is in tribute to Kairuhak. Before the fourth sunrise, the road shoulder has already shrugged off its riffraff. Grass grower overnight without tea or sympathy. Side alley slippers from the lights. Eye shadows all and sundry. Leaves veer behind the suns. Tugboat between nonplussed and shy pantyhose. You leave. The remains as it was, aqueducts bursting at seams away from the center of the spinning plate. A crab claws back, fig leaf, prawn crackering, something comes unstuck, sums added up. Eventually, everything swallows even eventually up. Puff. Evening spat out like newt. There's nothing to it. Lovers pistol whipped into acquiescence, then resume normal appliance before dinner function at 9. Come night, certain absentees glower, tips shudderer as vitreous floaters. I'm 20 seconds over. Sorry about that.
Thank you so much, Kai-Cha. I think, there's something visceral almost about that as well, right? Then just thinking about the violence, right, in many dimensions also depicted, but there's also something heroic about the struggle.
I love you as a reviewer. Thanks for.
I should point and draw everyone's attention also to the sales right after this, of course.
Oh
yes.
Please buy. Others my publisher has no money.
Yes, but I think there's definitely a lot that we like to tease out and explore with
Thank
this.
you.
I think really.
You're doing a good job. Very good.
Thank you. Okay, so perhaps if before we return to many of these rich issues, perhaps if we can, of course, invite Yufan, right, to share, and from your work, especially from your SLP shortlisted work. So Yufan, please.
Hello, thank you. My name is Yufan. This is my book shortlisted, and actually this book 我们不知道的归类 unable to classify, also shortlisted in Taiwan 周梦蝶10奖. So now I share some of the works in Chinese. 天地为师，走到世界的尽头，以为那里会有海或者天涯，其实是你和我一块墓碑而已。我们写的诗，只好当作墓志铭。还有相互调侃的冷笑话，不再字斟句酌，也不再管明天还有明天，或者有没有看中。如果侥幸还有一个半个知己，到这个不毛之地，读2句谁的诗，或者说一段故事，我就会和他喝2杯。哪怕来的只是一阵风，或者一片落叶。我们还要埋怨什么？正如什么也不会埋怨我们。我们把一切都托付天地，如果还愿意，连白骨和着泥尘都可以交出去。我们对着星辰拥抱皑皑白雪。我一定还记得《将进酒》和《短歌行》，你一定会喝你的柴可夫斯基。如诗的富有，没有时间而拥有永恒，没有房屋而拥有大地，没有一切还拥有诗。什么都没有也没关系。天地自有谱写诗的旅者，在旅途中的每一步，诗自然生成。你我又何尝不是？This is talking about, in short, is about I imagine one day I pass away, and what will I have? Maybe nothing. I think nothing. So, but it's okay. I'm not poor because I still have poems. So if you have poems, you are the richest person in the world. So that's all about.
Thank you.
And I'd like to, I try 3 poems. The second one is 翻译软体。何红红翻译软体，替我把简体翻译成繁体，把华语翻译成国语，把国语翻译成普通话， 把发现翻译成发现，把希望翻译成明天，把食品安全翻译成良心食品，把妓女翻译成小姐或者鸡，把新闻翻译成八卦或者狗仔，把专制翻译成人民专政，把占领翻译成解放，习惯翻译成越来越多的麻木，把一艘船的沉没翻译成一群人的流浪，把 turn over a new leaf 翻译成改过一片新叶子。无论改什么都好，我们需要孩子的天真和自由，连叶子都改过了，就让孩子用诗句把它们通通改掉。Okay, thank you. Actually, this is talking about translation software. Actually, maybe it's Google Translation, but Google is not so bad. It's actually my friend teaching in secondary school Chinese language, and one day she shared on her Facebook saying that her student write say 改过一个新叶子, so she don't understand what does it mean. So she asked the student, and then the student say, "Oh, actually, teacher, this is turn over a new leaf." So then she shared. Then it triggered me to write this, because in this world, a lot of translation is very funny. So I try to use it, like try to insult somebody. Okay, for example, in Chinese, in China, you cannot call people 小姐. Okay, in Singapore, you can call people 小姐, but if you go China, you call people 小姐, they will, the lady will scold you, because 小姐 in China means prostitute. So it's very funny. And in Hong Kong, is chicken is prostitute. So there are people, I don't want to say which country, invasion is called liberation, 解放, you know. And then they also call themselves people's dictatorship. Okay, so yeah, it's a bit politician. Okay, the next one. 再高一点的海，海升起来的时候，他们还会开会。北极熊在游泳，进行最后一场马拉松。他说：“我们在山上，浪再高几十尺，我们也不会死，最多各自做岛民。我们的早餐是鱼加阳光，午餐是鱼加海浪，晚餐是鱼加月亮。当然还有海盐、海风和浪漫。我们的海还可以再高一点，让不喜欢海的人可以爱海。我们用手一捞，就可以捞到天涯。海长高时，他们还在开会，在马尔代夫的海底下吃着富含鱼肝油的午餐。谢谢。Okay, this one is talking about actually global warming. And you know that when global warming, the sea level will come out and some of the islands will disappear. But the politicians in the world, they're still having their international conference and blah, 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 forever, and do nothing. So some say, it's okay, sea level go up. And then the most is, you know, we are still quite high up and maybe we can enjoy our fish. We can eat a lot of fish. So morning we can have fish plus sea wave. Our lunch will be fish and sunlight. And our dinner is fish plus moonlight. Not bad. so it's all about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Yifan. I really like the focus on translation that you brought to us as well, right? I reminded when you said the student, right?
Thank
you
you.
said 改过一个新叶子, like, which means like we're meant to say turn over a new leaf. I had a student who wrote in his essay, he turned into a new leaf. Right, I mean, and because it's so difficult, I think, for readers and for students, for anyone, users of language in general. And as you pointed out, how slippery language can be, right, in that sense as well. So how difficult it is to translate terms, and often translation has an agenda behind it in many senses. And maybe translation is one of the terms that I think many of our writers here would be fascinated by, and which we'd like to delve into as well, right? So, in fact, this is the perfect point for us to move on to the just moving back right here, right? Yeah. Yes. Yes. I beg your pardon.
Do we have time for 2 more points?
Yes. For the to share poems. Oh yes, we do. Maybe if it's all right, we can. Yeah. All right. Invite Imba to share. Yeah. So okay. Maybe okay. I'll just turn back to your slide in that case. Right. Okay. Just for that. Okay, maybe if we can invite Imba once again, just to share. Yeah.
I took a very less time, so. Okay, so one more poem from me. This poem is about the Bidok Reservoir, the water. Okay, Bidok Nadi அமைதியாக ஓடுகிறது. இந்த ஆற்றின் எண்ணற்ற ஓசைகளை கேட்கும் ஹெர்மன் ஹெசேயின் சித்தார்த்தனும் இல்லை. இந்த ஆற்றின் குரல்களை கேட்கச் சொன்ன வாசுதேவனும் இல்லை. ஆறு எங்கே செல்கிறது? பிடோக் பேராறு அமைதியாய் பேரமைதியாய் மெல்ல அசைகிறது. நீரை யாரும் தொடுவதில்லை, கை கால்களை நனைப்பதில்லை, அதில் குளிப்பதில்லை. யாருக்கும் அன்போ வெறுப்போ எதுவுமே இந்த ஆற்றின் மீது இல்லை. கொட்டும் மழையில் மறுபடியும் நிறைகிறது, மறுபடியும் தழும்புகிறது. இருபுறமும் ஆயிரம் ஆயிரம் கண்கள் வேடிக்கை பார்த்தபடி கடக்கின்றன. காற்றை உள்வாங்கியபடியே கரையில் தனிமையில் இளைப்பாறுகிறது வெறும் மணல். சின்னஞ்சிறு பறவையின் மென் சீண்டலில் மெல்ல சலனித்து ஆடி ஆடி நகர்கிறது பிடோக் பேராறு. Let me tell you the meaning for this. I think I could read. Here, countless sounds of this river. Neither is Hermann Hesse's Siddhartha, neither is Vasudeva. He told me to listen to the voices of this river. Where does this river go? Bidok Reservoir. Quietly, peacefully, slowly swaying. No one touches this water. Do not wet your hands or feet. No bathing. Love or hate anyone. Nothing is on this river. It is pouring rain. It fills up again. It's falling again. Thousands of eyes on both sides. They're just watching, walking, and pass by. The air is inhaled alone on the shore. Resting sands. When the young bird touches softly, it jumps and leaps, and moving the big Bidok Reservoir. So that's about the poem. So I used to go walking around this Bidok Reservoir site. So I always watch the water, but no one touches, no one bother about the water. So always I feel like the water is there for whom, and that's the reason for this poem. There's one more poem I have. It's actually Brownie. Brownie is actually my pet. It's not only my pet, it's my friend's pet too. So just read that poem too. Brownie சில குறிப்புகள். அதிகாலையில் நடைப்பயணத்திற்கு வரும் நாய்களை கவனிக்க தொடங்குகிறேன். சங்கர் கவிதையில் வரும் பிரௌனி என் கவிதையிலும் வாக்கிங் வருகிறது. இந்தோனேஷிய பணிப்பெண் வாரை பிடித்து இழுத்து வருகிறாள். கூடவே வரும் நாய்க்குட்டி ஒற்றைக்காலை தூக்கி ஆங்காங்கே நின்று கொள்கிறது. குனிந்து எதையோ தேடிக்கொண்டே நடக்கிறது. கால்களை முகர்ந்தபடியே நகர்கிறது. பின் மெல்ல தயங்கி செல்கிறது. பயந்து பின் வாங்கியபடியே என்னை கடந்து செல்கிறது. நானும் பயந்தது போலே நகர்ந்து செல்கிறேன். அவள் இழுக்கும் பக்கமெல்லாம் வாலாட்டியபடியே செல்கிறது. நிலாவே வா, செல்லாதே வா என பாலசுப்பிரமணியத்தை ஒலிக்க விட்டு குடிலை நோக்கி நடக்கின்றேன். சாலை நெகிழ்ந்து கிறங்கி இருக்கிறது. பிரௌனிகள் அழகானவை. சில பிரௌனிகள் மற்றவர் கவிதையில் சுற்றித் திரிகின்றன. சில பிரௌனிகள் மற்றவர் கால்களுக்கிடையே சுற்றித் திரிகின்றன. சில பிரௌனிகள் மற்றவர் கைப்பாவையாய் சுற்றித் திரிகின்றன. சில பிரௌனிகள் நம் வாழ்விலும் வந்துவிடுகின்றன. எல்லா பிரௌனியும் எல்லோருக்கும் இல்லைதானே? That's the poem about a brownie. Let me tell you the English meaning for this poem. But it's not a one-to-one translation. I'm just giving the meaning for that. I'm not a translator too. Okay. Come early in the morning for a walk. I start looking after the dogs. Brownie in Shankar's poem, walking into my poetry. Shankar is one of the famous poets in Tamil. So he's also having a pet called Brownie. So his Brownie is walking into my poem. So Indonesian helper grabs the tie and pulls him, accompanying puppy with a single leg lift. It stops here and there. Bending over and looking for something, moves by sniffing the legs, then slowly hesitates, passes me back in fear. I move like I'm scared. Wherever she pulls, it goes in a tailspin. Nilaveva Selladeva, that is a song, Tamil song. There's a Balasubramaniam is a singer, Tamil singer. So his song I play in my headset. I walk towards the hut, the road rutted. Brownies are lovelies. Some brownies wander around in other people's poetry. Some of the brownies rolled around between others' legs. Some brownies are moved around like puppets of others. Some brownies come into our lives too. Not all brownies are for everyone. Yeah, that's the poem about the brownie.
Thank you, Inba.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure.
Enough?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yes. Thank you so much. Yeah. Please take it.
Thank you.
Thank you. I really like the nature imagery, right? And like when you talk about Bedok Reservoir, for example, right, and walking along, I think there's a lot more in terms of what our poets, in terms of our natural heritage, that our poets could take inspiration from in that sense. And also Brownie. Were you inspired by Shankar's poetry to name your pet meaning
Correct.
pet dog?
Yeah, correct. Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Shankar usually writes a lot of poem about brownies. So I usually very closely watching his poems and very inspired by his lines. So thereafter, when I started watching the brownies, then I intend to write about the same brownies, how this brownie walking into my poem, how it looks. So these brownies are not specific to any particular one, but some brownies are puppets. Some brownies are coming into our life. Not only I'm mentioning about brownie, it's just a symbolism. It's not about brownie only, but it's also our people.
Yes,
Yeah.
right. I think on that note, when it's about people and how words and the beauty of words and of poetry, of course, and how it all beautifully intersects, I think this is a great segue for us to proceed to our Q&A portion. So if we could invite questions, of course, from the audience, either in person or online. And in the meantime, while we are waiting, if I could perhaps begin with the first question, if I could. I'm just going to turn into our general slide as well, right? Yes, right here. Right. So perhaps if I could ask all our esteemed poets, right, how was the writing process like in terms of the works you've just read? What inspired you? What was that writing process like was it during COVID? Was it after? Right. What inspired you during this entire process, especially in relation to the Poetry Festival Singapore theme of resurgence? Right. So just highlighting the theme here, I'm sure my festival director would like me to do so. So any one of our poets would like to share in terms of what's the writing process been like for you? Yeah. Maybe yeah, Irfan, would you like to? Since we've seen we naturally
okay,
gesturing.
right.
Yeah.
No, just
okay, fine.
as the festival director. Well, actually, the collection wasn't written during COVID. It was written way before COVID. But I would say that writing during COVID is our life buoy. Basically, writers can write despite the inconvenience of luxuries of time. So precisely why writing becomes the way we turn to, because you can write by yourself. You don't need these people, right? You can write by yourself. Yeah. So I think writing saves us from insanity. Definitely saves me from insanity. Yeah.
It's a solitary activity, but it also keeps us sane in that sense that it grounds us.
Well, it gives you plenty of time, to either moan or you could reflect, and then you look at people around you and see whether you're that pitiful or you're actually blessed with the power of words. Everyone here, I mean, for instance, Jiaguwen. I mean, I wish I could, steal a bit of that and then steal a bit of everybody's. But yeah, I think that's the beauty of being a writer. You don't need too many luxuries. Although it's good to have a higher award money lah, but otherwise it's quite.
NAC, do you hear that? No, of course. Yeah. Is that how perfect, right? Like how that it's helpful to have the affirmation, but it's not ultimately essential, right? We speak of that.
Money?
Oh, wow, that's a different thing, right? Right.
I'm just teasing.
Sure. Right. So maybe in response, like, Jiao Shou.
Actually, the poetry selected in my books, the earliest was written in 1987, and then the latest 2021. Yeah, because I intended to write a book to use Chinese poetry to explain or to elaborate the hidden meaning of these ancient Chinese characters. That's why I try to choose the poetry from my past works and then to fit into the theme of this book. Yeah. Because a lot of the original meaning of this Chinese character has already changed. Like every day we say war, me, I. War in ancient Chinese is actually a kind of weapon. It's not me, it's not I. And then 自己的自 is actually nose. When you write the word
and the term 自己 meaning self, of course.
自 is not self. You can
I
see
mean, like
from my slide.
today, like
Sorry.
right?
Yeah,
Is it?
I need to show you my slide again. Where is it? 己, where is the 己? This is the one. Very interesting again.
Sure.
Okay. This is the word 己. I can show it personally because this turning is actually the tummy, 肚子. 这个己是肚子, you know. So it's not myself. But this meaning remain in Cantonese dialect. 生己啊，生己怀孕啊. When they pregnant, they call 有咗生己. Is this word? 生己就是自己的己. It's actually pregnant. Oh, so 生己嘅生sorry, Cantonese 身体的身，我们现在写的身是这个身嘛？身体的身嘛？你看这个身
meaning body.
No, it's actually pregnant woman. You see,
so
这个身体的身是大肚子嘛？ You can see from the picture here. It's actually pregnant woman. And then in 小篆 and 甲骨文, it's interesting because the pregnant woman need to support herself to stand right up. So put out one leg so that she can stand more firmly. So 所以我们的身会有一撇出来。这个身会有一撇出来，其实是用她的脚在 support 她的大肚子，不然她会向前倾，她会跌倒。那这是很有趣的，这很有趣的事情。所以我觉得很多的字的改变需要解释，可是如果作为一个学术著作，就是你把它当成一本 you write if you write the you try to explain the ancient Chinese character in these essays or even this you publish in all those very heavy 学术论文集啊 then it's
like
too
academic
difficult.
journals.
Yeah, it's too difficult for the public to accept. That's why I try to use poetry. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you, Prof. Lee, really for sharing. I mean, the fascinating story and how it's we see history in words, right? The sheer beauty of that. So definitely, history here itself is your inspiration, you know. And so, of course, I mean, like when thinking about the other theme of the Singapore Literature Prize, which is resonance here, right? Maybe if I could ask all our poets and writers, like, how does your work resonate in that sense with yourself and with your readers, with others? Yeah.
A question to me, is that?
Oh, sure. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so this work is not really meant to write during this COVID or pre-COVID or post-COVID, but yeah, there are a lot of variations in this collection. It purely talks about land and its identity and the connections with the emotions. Yeah, so not really connected to the theme of SLP or poetry festival, right? So various themes now, basically.
Sure.
Yeah.
And in a way, that's how it's all interconnected like that,
Yeah, it's
right?
connected to the emotions. Yeah.
Right. And when we speak of emotions, I mean, it's complex, of course, in that sense, right? Like, how would you say that what's the dominant emotions or themes that your work evokes then?
Yeah, so that's why I said that it is predominantly, it talks about the land and its identity. Yeah, that's what the literature talks about the feel. That's what the literature is for. It has to feel. The literature has to feel for others. It has to connect the heart to heart, heart to mind. Yeah.
Right.
So I believe in that. Ultimately, at the end of the day, when you read a book, it has to connect you somewhere. You have to feel for it. Otherwise, it is like a comprehension or just a paragraph or anything that what you are doing it in the school, just writing a comprehension that anyone can read. If it is not giving any kind of a feelings, no point of writing it. So I believe my book will give some kind of feelings. Yeah.
It's not a mere academic exercise, but it connects emotionally
Yes.
in that sense with the reader.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you, Imba, for that. I think maybe in response, and just a reminder to our online audience that you can also just post, all right, and just share, and our team as well will raise any of these questions to us right here, yeah. Or of course, with our in-person audience, a very impassioned poetry enthusiasts or poets who have kindly graced this occasion to join us. Feel free to raise questions. But otherwise, maybe because we are running out of time soon, so we would like to perhaps invite our poets to maybe share some closing words, right? So just to share, perhaps in terms of some reflections that you feel you've gleaned based on each other's, one another's readings. What's inspired you now for your own works? Yeah. So with that, but before we get to that question, we should have some wait time, right, to check in case there's any questions from our online audience or anyone, just to check in, right? Because otherwise, of course, our poets are right here. Feel free to connect with us along the way. Then otherwise, maybe if I can invite, I think Irfan, you've been very quiet. If we could invite you to share, yes, like what kind of inspiration, 有什么灵感? Yeah.
Okay, maybe I share a bit on how I write. In fact, I started writing when I was a student, secondary student is 40 years ago. And I wrote for maybe 10 years and I stopped because I went to China working for a few years and then to Bahrain and I stopped somehow. And I stopped for 30 years. And when I came back to Singapore, then I started to write again. And why is that? I don't understand. So I used to write like every day. I write 1 or 2 poems. So with or without COVID, I will still write. Maybe COVID will confine me to read more and write. So what inspired me to write? I think if you read other people's work, you'll find that, oh, actually like that you can write. So actually I can write this way. And if you travel, you will write. So a lot of things will make us write. Like I read 几首浪情诗. So I find that, oh, this is very interesting because other people write maybe in different way. Maybe the way she think is from different culture, from English. So, but I can learn from her. So yeah, like today I read. I mean, I don't quite understand, but I can feel the rhythm from
Imba's
Iba.
works.
Yeah, yes, I like that. So yeah. Okay, I don't know whether I confuse you.
No. I think you've really nicely shared and articulated the inspiration really from that can be derived cross culturally in that sense,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And that's precisely what poetry is about, right? And that's what we at PFS are celebrating, the kind of multi-linguistic, multicultural heritage that we're so blessed to be able to learn from, right? And to see, like, for example, how even in what's all around us, I mean, we might not even notice the reservoirs, they're just right at our doorstep. Or to see like even Brownie, right, crossing into our poetry. Now it hasn't just crossed into your poetry, but into perhaps our own minds and our own worlds, because we've learned about these characters. I mean, I personally would not have known of Shankar's works, for instance, right? And to really learn of that heritage has been such a blessing. Like that. So thank you, Irfan, for this. Maybe if we can invite our other esteemed poets. Since just now we went this way, perhaps we can go once again. Kai Chai, if I could invite just
to answer SLP question,
sure,
in case he's here, the director. So how to fit into the resonance theme? I would guess that I would use the word resonance and break it down into the idea of sound. So instead of saying resonance in terms of like, oh, I can relate to your themes and everything, which is fine, but I'm looking at language as just morphemes or just sound, just units, so that like I don't understand Tamil, but I, like you say, can hear the rhythm and everything and the repetition and the visual elements. So multimedia. So the resonance is nothing to do with feelings per se, but to do with the fresh eyes that you're looking at poetry, like the way you're looking at Clara Chow's poetry. So resonance to me is to do with the power of sounds beyond language and beyond meaning. I mean that's what I hope to achieve with the way I use my poetry. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Kai Chai. Yes, it's something that will strikes you to the core in almost a bodily way.
Nothing to do with dictionary meanings. It's to do with the power of the whatever is the sibilance or is it a hard consonants. So when you look at meanings alone, it's all very intellectualized. But when you look at words as more than meaning, a repository of meaning, but looking at it as just another art form, another medium that has, like, the language of love means in Mandarin to be I, right? I don't know about Tamil, but I suspect it's another beautiful language. Of course, in Malay with sayang, I mean, it has all different types of nuances. So the meaning of love in different languages have different sounds. And why can't you express, even in English, you can break it down. I mean, that's how I look at it. Nothing to do with your question, but okay.
No. It's all connected like that. Thank you, Kai Chai, really. And in that sense, of course, I think the interconnections, like we're climbing that tower of meaning, to use your metaphor.
Thank you. Very, very well done.
Thank you. 教授，请问最后有什么感想？Any reflections for us?
I think if I want to increase the productivity of my works, I need to quarantine more. Yeah, I think so, because I teach in a university at Zhuhai. I need to travel to Guangzhou and then to Zhuhai. So in the past 2 years, I was quarantined in Guangzhou hotels for more than 45 days. And then in Zhuhai, hostel for more than 21 days. Altogether, 66 days. During the 66 days, I have written more than 100 poetry. So I think I should quarantine more, right?
Thank you, Prof. Lee. Right, it sounds as though solitude really, right? It's such a balm. I mean, it's such and that's a lesson for us all in terms of inspiration, like that, right? So, and of course, Imba, if any final reflections for us?
Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to get a quarantine. Otherwise, I could have written 100 more poems. So actually, basically, I'm an IT person. I'm doing IT project management. Writing is my passion and pleasure. But unfortunately, as I said, I couldn't get time to rest, or even I could get a quarantine during this COVID period also, because it's working from home, stretchers are working hours, and doing a lot more things than pre-COVID time. So though we could manage, and the writing is always, as a writer, they will always write. They don't just simply sit. Right? I believe in that. So even though it's a COVID or not COVID, the writer will do their part. But only the time matters. Yeah. So today is a good opportunity for me. So I have some takeaway points from each one of you. The way how he has reading the poetry and the concepts that you took. It really impressed. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, I learned from you. And for the English poems, it's very intensive. I could believe. Yeah, I would like to read your book. I'll get it from you.
You're welcome to read.
Yeah. Okay. So the Chinese poem is very innovative way of writing these poems. I believe so. I never seen that any other language has this kind of innovations. But though Tamil language has lots of other this kind of representing poems in different manners, there are some drawings with the poems, but not this much intensive I could see. So I want to learn from that also. Yeah, so thanks for the opportunity. It's a good session, you could say. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Imba. And with that, can you join me in thanking all our poets right here, all our SLP nominated poets, shortlisted poets, and really appreciate your earnest sharings like that. Right, so with this, thank you so much, poets. We can invite you to take a break at the side over here as we proceed to the next group of poets whom we are very excited to invite here. Yes, if we are all ready, we can just come forward as well. So at this point, we will proceed. Just a reminder to everyone who's tuning in online, right, that of course right here we are, so we can invite our poets to come in. So Zining and Daryl, Clara and Kairu. Yes. Thank you. If you're all good. Okay, just a reminder, of course, for everyone who's tuning in now. Oh, okay, okay. We are taking a break for a minute, so everyone relax. Yeah. Meaning to 4 p.m. Kairu will not be reading, is it? Are you reading from the front? Okay, that is 6 minutes or 7 minutes? 6 minutes, okay. So I will time for everyone, but it's 6 minutes. Try and find a 6-minute exit, but I will time it. Okay. So, whose cue? Very good afternoon once again, everyone, and welcome to Poetry Festival Singapore. Right, so we are coming to the second session of Meet the Poets who are shortlisted for the Singapore Literature Prize 2022, organized by the Singapore Book Council. Right, once again, I'm Waikid, and I'm moderating the session today. Right, so this is, of course, part of the Poetry Festival Singapore, and here we have the Singapore Literature Prize, which is a biennial competition open to Singapore citizens and permanent residents. Right, and of course, the works eligible would be in all 4 official languages. This is supported once again by Arts House Limited and sponsored by CLASS. So in this second session, we are very privileged to have with us our second group of poets. If we can welcome Mok Zining, right here. And yeah, so of course, just to clarify, of course, to everyone that we have an online and in-person audience. So feel free to join us anytime right here. So just to introduce perhaps each one of us in turn. So Zining is a recent graduate of the MFA program at the University of Minnesota, where she taught creative writing and currently is a research associate at SMU. And of course, author of the Orchid Folios. Yeah. And of course, we have Daryl Lim Wei Jie. right? Who is a poet, writer, and literary critic from Singapore, and the co-editor of Food Republic, a Singapore literary banquet, right? And winner of the Golden Point Award in 2015 for English poetry. And presenting her poetry in Chinese is Clara Chow, right? Who started her career in journalism, but now runs Hermit Press. And she's been a writer in residence at Toji Cultural Center in South Korea. And she's an honorary fellow of the University of Iowa's International Writing Program. And last but not least, of course, we have Muhammad Kairuhak, who will also be sharing during this entire session. He's a writer and educator, and he won the Golden Point Award in 2009 and the ASEAN Young Writers Award in 2014. So if all our readers and all our poets today will be reading a short excerpt, around 6 minutes of their work, before we have a general Q&A. So first off, to start us off, if we could invite Zining to share with us from your work. So Zining, please.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. I'm really glad to be sharing some of my work today. So before I start kind of reading from it, it's quite a strange little book. It is listed as poetry, but it does have fiction, poetry, and nonfiction. So today I'll be reading from the fiction part, the poetry part, and the nonfiction part. And I'll try to kind of differentiate between these sections with different accents, because that's kind of how I hear it in my head. So everything here is kind of tied around or like resonates with the local history of the orchid. Okay. I was about to leave. Then I tripped, knocked over the books I'd stacked to make a stand for my phalaenopsis. The pot shattered. The roots were bare, coiled tightly around bark. It's overdue for reporting. I was surprised I felt nothing else. It's an old orchid, one I gave Mum almost a decade ago, before the store opened. My oldest orchid. It flowers still. One of the books on that stack, a dictionary, had fallen open. On the right was a morning glory, its indigo now sepia. On the left, a brown stain. I bent to pick it up, sent a flurry of flowers and leaves flitting to the floor. Mom used to bring me to the neighborhood park. The swings at the playground made small silver squeaks. On the way home, we would study the ground for blooms to press between pages. We had a vast collection, which I had forgotten for years. Until now, when I find myself sitting on cold towel, sobbing amidst the foliage of a past life. Floristry basics, cuttings. A word is a cutting, a sentence, a bouquet. When the inflorescence wilts, scatter cuttings in a tub of water. Allow words to float as they absorb the new context into which they have been plunged. Orchid, noun, 1. Orchid grew out of the Greek orchis, for tubers of orchids resemble testicles. Orchis, hybrid son of a nymph and a satyr, raped a priestess at a festival held for Dionysus. The fates sent wild beasts to tear his body apart. Orchis's father mourned and prayed the gods would make his body whole again. Instead, they took the deconstructed material of his body and rearranged it into a plant, flowering still. That's all I have for today.
Thank you, Zining. I think we can definitely hear how you've very carefully pruned and grafted your words, just like, well, words are cuttings and bouquets, right? And like that as well. I think we definitely want to delve into the various metaphors that you've also very painstakingly grown. So next up, we have Daryl, right? And if we could invite Daryl to share with us, perhaps from Anything But Human. Daryl, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll be reading from this book called Anything But Human. I'm kind of going to stop trying to describe the book in my own terms because I always get it wrong. So what I'll do is I'll read some of the blurbs which some authors have given me to describe the book, so you can actually better understand it. And one of them is Kai Chai, who read just now. And Kai Chai describes this book as a bacchanalia of banal and familiar objects crystallized into revelations. And my friend Amanda Chong says that here you will find a sensory playground for the overworked bourgeoisie, a Zen retreat for production factors in a post-capitalist world, a city deconstructed that you will come to see anew. And so these are two descriptions of Anything But Human. The other thing I want to say about the book is that actually the book, and actually one delightful thing about today's reading was hearing so many other languages other than English, which I think we haven't had a multilingual reading in a long, long while. And the book's title is from a Chinese poem by this Chinese poet, Wang Xiaoni. And the line goes, 除了人，现在我什么都想冒充. Now I like to pass myself off as anything but human. And so this is where the title of the book comes from. I'll read 3 poems. The first poem is called Sunday, which is very appropriate because today is Sunday. And Sunday, I think, encapsulates a sense of contentment and like widespread convenience in Singapore, but you are aware that something is off. And Sunday and a lot of the poems in the first part of this book capture that sense of things being off. Your stillness leaves me gasping against the parquet. Road widening continues. Ma is getting her hair done again. In Red Hill, a man fitfully pisses into a storm drain. Soft fruit is stepped on, a gravelly paste on gravel. They say that fried chicken has never been so widely available. America thinks that we are Indonesia, Vietnam, North Korea. Parliament is closed today, but so are the KTV lounges. In Cantonese, we say, we've waited so long, even our necks are long. After I'm dead, please burn my epic poem about conservancy charges. When is the next election? Asked nobody. At the market, the uncle is somewhat ethnocentric. This new development combines retail, petroleum refining, and jazz. Buy low and sell before the warheads are fired. I deny everything, even my denials. I wish to make a living writing haiku on tea bags. The nation's favorite sex position is tax deductible. Like everyone else, I cried. I get up from the floor and make myself a highball. Tonight, I will dream of a snake made of green smoke, sliding vaguely through the mile a minute, either going home or elsewhere. It's impossible to say. Thank you. The next poem, which I'll read, is from this poem called Junk Space, Rhapsodies. And Junk Space, just very quickly to say, is this concept that this architect, Dutch architect Rem Koolhaas, came up with. And he describes shopping malls and all these spaces as junk space. And this is a shopping mall poem. Junk Space, Rhapsodies. We've lost count of the subsidiaries we have. Money, they say, it's its own reward. Your girlfriend would appreciate a new succulent. We've recently reached new heights of customer feedback. Money, they say, it's its own reward. The manager grew up in the bakeware section. We've recently reached new heights of customer hatred. Would you like a snow globe of the Vietnam War? The manager grew up in the lingerie section. To pacify ourselves, we bought a new kettle. Would you like a snow globe of the Watergate scandal? The cleaner's smooth face obscures a history of violence. To pacify ourselves, we ate a new kettle. We're out of all sizes except impossibly tiny. The cleaner's smooth face obscures a history of love. If you close your eyes, it's like you're back in the Greek agora. We're out of all sizes except out of shape. You'll be surprised at how many things are now half price. If you close your eyes, it's like you're back in the Grand Bazaar. Over here, we do repackaging of gifts and mortgages. You'll be surprised at how many things are now free of charge. The air conditioning doubles up as disinfectant. Over here, we do repackaging of gifts and mortgages. I'm sorry I can't help you. Can't you see I've just quit? We've just found out how many subsidiaries we have. The air conditioning doubles up as reinfectant. Your girlfriend would appreciate a new agate Spock. I'm sorry I can't help you. Can't you see I'm in charge? Thank you. I'll read one more poem since we have, I think if we have time. I will read the last poem of the book, which is called Age of Miracles. Age of Miracles. Terror ate our gut flora, while the post office suspended habeas corpus. I have waited 50 years for running water and aerosol cheese. Before our Lord I deigned to perspire, the clouds bubbled with chlorine. The angels spoke of bulk discounts. The light shaved 10 pounds off my wrist. I came back to Earth with a new calendar, the months named after nerve agents. Sorry? I tried to reach you with outdated technology. Forgive me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daryl. I think all of us can hear that yearning for connection as well in that sense, right? And there's something as the blurb pointed out about the sensory buffet amidst for the bourgeoisie in that sense, and something almost insistent about that concern with crass commercialism that we see as well, right? So these are the themes we like, really rich that we'd like to explore later, right? Now presenting her poetry in Chinese, if we can invite Clara Chow, please.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. So this is the Hermit Press edition, which is different from the Math Paper Press version. So it has Chinese on one side, and then if you turn it over, it's the English translation. So I always forget which side I'm looking at. So this poem is called 多情的人来到多情的城。多情的人来到多情的城，满街都是暗号，印刷厂的壁画悄悄守着。我在这里等你，这里却是永定不了位的哪里？窗里的霓虹灯闪烁着，怎么爱你？是问题还是悲叹？随你。又有建筑工地的安全围墙，这里每个角落可以找到爱。都市盖大楼，几时做起媒婆了？我步行到每一个地点。路名隐藏着你，照张相为证据吧，保留当时的我，在众人寻你，纵横四海，潇洒的风姿，念你的我，投进念你的城，优雅的怀抱，我和他都喃喃自语，背熟没人看懂的符号。Okay, so thank you. So the English translation, which I was too lazy to translate properly, so I just ran it through Google Translate and then I fixed it. So it's called The Sentimentalist Comes to an Amorous City. The sentimentalist comes to the amorous city. The streets are full of secret signs. The mural in the printing house is quietly guarding. I am waiting for you here. Here is where the GPS could never pinpoint. The neon lights in the window flicker. How to love you. A question or a lament? Up to you. The safety barrier at a construction site. You can find love at every corner. Since when did the metropolis play matchmaker? I walk to a certain place. The name of the road hides you. Let's snap a picture as proof, preserving me of this moment, looking for you in the crowd all over the world. I who miss you am thrown into the city's graceful embrace. I murmur to it, memorizing symbols no one else comprehends. Okay, so this one, 我爱你爱到可以报假新闻，我爱你爱到可以报假新闻，我不怕政府，不怕坐牢，不怕打官司，不怕明败生裂，在我人称的各个广播电台、报社网站，闪烁着同一个头条。 本姑娘是个正常人，不为你太完美而绝望。谁稀罕？谁稀罕？谁稀罕？不敢贪，不敢当，不敢谈。So this one is called I Love You Until I Can Report Fake News. I love you enough to report fake news. I'm not afraid of the government, not afraid of going to jail, not afraid of lawsuits, not afraid of ruining my reputation on websites, radio stations, and in the newspapers of my life. The same headline flashes. This girl is a normal person, not desperate for your perfection. Who is rare and who wants that rareness so badly? Don't dare to be greedy. Don't sigh. Here's a cheesy one. It's called 你那么美，百分妩媚。你那么美，百分妩媚。我看你下辈子投胎做女人吧，我做你的男人，换个方式角度来爱你，让我尝试守护你的满足感。或许我也做回女人，我俩红颜知己，桃花树下交换金钗，然后自拍，悠闲的看帅哥。我会原谅你的水性杨花，你会培育我的性别流动感。So that is, you are so beautiful and 100% charming. You are so beautiful and 100% charming. I think you will be reborn as a woman in your next life. I be your man. Changing the method and angle of loving you. Let me taste the satisfaction of protecting you. Maybe I will be a woman again. We'll be confidants, exchanging gold hairpins under the peach blossom tree, then taking a selfie while watching handsome guys at leisure. I will forgive you your roving eye. You will accompany my gender fluidity.
Thank you, Clara. I think we can sense a different kind of fluidity in your verse and the sheer versatility and the bilingualism of it. And let's just say, despite your references to 假新闻 or fake news, you won't get POFMAT, rest assured, for that. So thank you, Clara. And last but not least, if we could invite Muhammad Kairuhak to share with us your work. So Kairu, please.
Hi. Okay, so I will read my poem and I'll be interspersing it with a bit of explanation so that it can be better understood. So the first poem is titled Mencari Obat. Mencari Obat means finding medicine. Lewat iklan televisyen dan radio, kita disuguh dengan obat yang seperti gemala ajaib merawat setiap penyakit tanpa perlu dibaca nadi oleh tabib yang mengerti. Kita mencari makjun yang merangkumi semua, rempah dan herba sebagai ubat yang merawat segala, tanpa perlu derita pantang dan petua orang lama. Setiap pagi, ubat dimakan sebelum menyambung tabiat lama kerana sakit hanya singgah sebagai kelaziman hidup, bukan singgah membawa pesanan langit. So here I'm talking about how within the local television, radio, there's always advertisement of health products. And these health products, some of it or most of it tries to claim that it works based on the principle of traditional medicine and things like that. But what is being done is more of commercialism, whereby it's not based on, for example, the principle of inspecting the pulse, reading the pulse and other aspects of traditional medicine, but is how they promote a medicine that is one size fit all. And so this we can say that this is how it tricks people into buying it, whereby people want something that is fast, that is you just take this magic pill and it can cure off everything. Like, okay, our medicine can cure diabetes, blood pressure, and things like that. And so, because of this, we fail to see how sickness is something that carries a message whereby there is something that needs to be done to our body. There is something that needs to be changed. There are habits that needs to be changed. But because of this, of the way we approach our health, of the way, not we, but how it's being commercialized, because of this, instead of going through exercise, dieting, and things like that, the people of the community tries to find that so-called magic remedy. Yeah. And so I continue. Sebelum mencari obat, kenal punca sakit. Kerana pil penenang tidak meleraikan kusut jiwa dan pil penahan sakit hanya mematikan rasa. Ubat tidak dibeli seperti gula-gula seorang anak. So before we find the medicine or before we buy medicine and things like that, what needs to be done is to find or to seek the real cause of our illness, because pil penenang, antidepressant, and pil penahan sakit, painkillers, does not really cure. And the medicine is not bought like how we buy candies for kids. And I end it with sakit pandan tidak tahukan duri, sakit badan tidak tahukan diri. Pandan mencari air dan mentari, manusia menamui segala dalam diri. So this has a bit of play with traditional Malay poetry, whereby it speaks about how the pandan leaf requires sun, requires water, and at the end of the day, what is required for us is to seek the real cause of illness within ourselves. So it's not just about the physical remedy, but it's also about spiritual, emotional, and other aspects of ourselves. So yeah, that is about mencari obat. Do we have time for one more?
Can 1 minute?
Oh, 1 minute. Okay, 1 minute. There's just one more poem. I'll just maybe read a few lines. Okay, this poem is titled Kitab Kuning. Kitab Kuning is like old yellow books, usually being used by, because last time most of the books, they use yellow paper. So Kitab Kuning is about religious books, or just any old book, old manuscripts and things like that. So one paragraph from this, one stanza from this, Kitab Kuning bukan peta yang tidak menerima jalan-jalan baharu untuk singgahsana cita. So this old yellow book is not like a map that does not receive new direction in order to head towards wherever that we want to go. So it's a form of how we deconstruct and how we use and how we take from what is from the past to connect it to the future. Yeah, so that's a bit from what I've written. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kairu. I think you really inspire us with the question of whether we can really mencari ubat, for our souls through poetry in that sense as well, right? And perhaps even with those kitab kuning, right? And with these treasures of the past, I mean, that's one way we can really learn more about ourselves in that sense as well, right? So I think this is the perfect point for us to proceed with our general Q&A. So likewise, if we can invite any questions from our audiences, either online or in person, so feel free to raise questions. Yes, if we could invite, likewise. Do we need a mic or just shout out there, yeah, and we'll voice it, yeah.
So today, from all the poets that were sharing, you notice that when each poet shared their poem in a different language, actually I'll say the idea or the intuition behind each poem comes from very different places. So it's like quite interesting that the language affects the way that the poetry sounds and what it means and the imagery that it uses to express itself. So I was wondering if you guys have any insights on how language changes the way poetry is expressed, and is there like some untranslatable essence behind a poem in its native language? And is there some commonality between all languages? So are there like similarities and differences when you compare poems between languages?
Right. Thank you so much for that fascinating question. And just for the benefit of our online audience, we'll just voice it again for everyone's benefit. So the question was about how language inflects how poetry is received, right, in terms of of the insights expressed. And is there anything that is untranslatable, perhaps? Is there some commonality in common? Is there anything in common between all languages in terms of poetry? So yes, back to the question, maybe any of our poets would like to respond to this. Is there anything that's untranslatable?
I just want to take your idea one step further and say that I feel like you're a different person in a different language. And that was partly why I wrote Lousy Love Poems. Because I feel like when I'm in Chinese, I'm a different person. I'm more polite and I'm nicer. And then when I'm in English, I'm kind of like more assertive. And I think that it's cultural. Part of it resides in the cultural associations that reside in the language itself. Then part of it is also like nurture, because I went to like a very traditional Chinese school. So Chinese is always like 老师早安, that kind of thing. So definitely when I read my poetry in English, I feel like even the tone is different. Something that sounds really serious in Chinese, and then when I read it in English, I just cannot help but think that it's very cheesy and funny, and then I make fun of myself. Whether there's anything untranslatable, I think everything is untranslatable. Yeah, like just from one language to another, it's a whole different poem. But yeah.
Yes. Any like to add on?
No, I wanted to say that when I heard Clara reading, I felt like some of the poems came from to Chinese via English first, because you could feel the energy was a bit different. Whereas some of the poems, I'm not sure if that was the case. So I thought that was quite interesting to me. Like the fake news poem I thought of Clara's had a very English, almost slam poetry kind of vibe to it, like spoken word energy to it. Yeah. So I thought Clara's Chinese poems bring interesting energy from English poetry. For myself, for translation, so I said that the book was the title comes from a Chinese poem. In the second half of the book, there are these translations of this Chinese Tang Dynasty poet, Bai Qi, and they are scattered throughout the book. And a lot of people kind of ask me why these poems are there. And I actually explained that in the first half of the book, I had sort of written myself into a rut where I was, quite, in a way, my poetic world ends. And so it's how do you start to write after that? And I found that actually translating Bai Qi helped me write myself out again of that rut, because he has a new energy, and I found his poetry really, really simple and easy to understand and easy to translate. And in translating him, I sort of found a new style and a new voice. So I don't feel like translation necessarily only works as a faithful way to bring the contents of one language to another. But for writers and poets like ourselves, translation actually has this way of sparking new languages, new images, new imaginations. And that has been quite valuable for me, and clearly for Clara as well.
Right. Yeah. Thanks so much, Daryl. Like there's that sense in which you find inspiration from the ancient past and also from cultures very different from our own as well. And maybe on that note of linguistic translation, maybe Kairu and then Sining,
Okay, I think for me, there were some requests like from friends, because even for people, the Malay-speaking community, like most of us, English is our first language. So there is always the request to, okay, can you please explain for me this poem in English? But unfortunately, I feel that it has to be done by someone else, because I won't be able to really give a translation due to my background in writing it. So basically, I feel personally that there are a lot of untranslatable terms, untranslatable, like for example, within my writings, I use a lot of idioms, and these are you have to know the context of the idiom. It has to be unpacked before you are able to translate it. And also folklores and things like that. So there's a lot of intertextuality that I use. And because of that, I think to translate it might probably require some footnotes or those kind of stuff. There are a lot of cultural elements, religious elements, and things like that, which I feel can be interpreted, but probably not translated. Yeah.
Right. Fascinating. Because at an earlier session as well, the poet Kobak Song was also saying that we should, in fact, have more footnotes to many of the poems. And since with many artworks in museums, we often have the annotations, we have captions to explain. So why don't we explain poems as well? I mean, and allow for that accessibility in that sense, and the cultural elements you spoke of, right? And speaking of culture, right? Perhaps, Zining, like, would you... I'm just thinking, of course, of orchid folios, like, and that sense of grafting, that sense of interspersing different elements. And would you say that your work also involves some kind of translation, whether it's linguistic or whether it's in terms of genres?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of translation. I think for me, even between like thinking and then trying to like put something down in words, there's a lot of translation going on already. I resonated a lot with what Clara you were saying about being different persons in different languages. And I think that applies even when you're just writing in different accents. Like, or if I'm using English like for talking to people versus when I'm using English to write poetry. Those are like very different registers and like types of English language. I think there are so many just like nuances and so many levels, and I think it's really fun to like put them all together, you know, and kind of play with the context a little bit and have maybe one thing gesture to this one context and then this other thing gesture to the other context. For me, it's really fun to put all of these different elements into one context and then like kind of see what happens. And that's a lot of what I think the poem, like a word is a cutting, a sentence, a bouquet is about. It's kind of putting these new things into a new context, these things into a new context. And then also using like metaphors and linguistic devices to translate ideas that are usually already familiar to us into something like into just a new form. Yeah, I think translation is just happening everywhere within a language. And I think that's really interesting. Yeah.
It's like a continuous process that's just dynamic in that sense, right? Like and it continues, and it never, that you can't really posit an endpoint in that sense, right? So perhaps on that note, if we can move on to this idea of inspiration and what your sources of inspiration are as well, if with your very divergent works, perhaps if I could invite all our poets to speak about what you find provocative and evocative as well for yourselves, right? And whether it's the poems that you've just shared or your work in general as a corpus. Yeah. So any of our poets like to start? Yeah, I see. Oh, sure. Then Zining.
So just I very similar, I think, to what I was saying just now. So just add a little bit more. So for me, it was really the orchid. And then when I started looking into the orchid, I was like, oh, there's so many angles I could like tackle from which I could tackle the subject. And then it was really strange because it was one day when I was looking at the etymology website and looking at word histories that I was just like, oh, like every word like has such a long history, and every time we're using a word, we're only activating like one very specific part of it. And I think it's similar with orchids as well. Like it has accumulated so many ideas. So it was through this that it was, I guess it was my inspiration actually, like etymology, that tied everything in this book together. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. Thank you, Zining. Yeah, and really sifting through different layers of histories. It's almost like different layers in terms of cultivation, like when you're sifting through layers of the soil, right? In that sense, yeah. And I mean, I'm just thinking of like right of the soil, since like Shu Hong is here in the audience with us. Yeah, but Daryl, maybe you'd like to add on about inspiration.
Yeah, sure. I think one way I've described the book before in like interviews and when people have asked me is that I think of ourselves right now in the times that we live in. We kind of live in a rubbish dump, in the rubbish dump in ecological sense, but also in terms of like of the mind and of words. So like fake news, social media nonsense, you know, we're just living in rubbish now. And these poems kind of arise from rubbish in the sense of I actually am very taken by some of the nonsense I see, like in advertising copy, in nonsense language. I don't necessarily hate it, I don't lament it, I actually celebrate some aspects of it. And in some ways, to me, rubbish can be art. And that's kind of one movement, one gesture that I make in my work. And so if you look at the cover of the book, actually it's a shipwreck. It's taken from this stock image of a ship graveyard in Russia, where these ships are all scuttled and they're rotting in this lake. And so the idea for me is actually rubbish is quite beautiful in its own way. And so that's the one inspiration that I have.
Oh, thanks, Daryl. Yeah, like sometimes, of course, like so many perspectives to it, right? And we never quite know like whether or not it's what's useful versus what's inspiring. And we can find inspiration in the unlikeliest of places in that sense. So maybe on that note, like, and just thinking of what you mentioned about fake news, since that was a direct reference in what Claire referred to in the poem. So is it similar, like what Daryl said in terms of your works?
Oh, I really like what Daryl said about like how we live among rubbish. And then it just reminded me of this phrase, lap sap tia, lap sap toa. You grow up eating rubbish and then you become rubbish. And actually, Lousy Love Poems really started life as a love letter to a Chinese actor that I had become obsessed with. So in a way, that was also like the rubbish that generated this thing. So I was really, kind of like fell in love with this actor, right? And then I was like, oh, I need to write some poems in Chinese so that he can understand me, right? So then I went to look at Weibo and I would kind of like try and read the kind of things that fans write. And so I thought, okay, this is like glorified fan poetry. Let's elevate fan poetry to something else. So I wanted to write one a day, but then I didn't manage to write one a day. So I had like 44 after a certain time. And I was really kind of like insecure about them. I didn't dare to like show them to anybody. So I did a bookmaking seminar that was online with the Center of Book Arts in New York. And somehow, because they were all like New Yorkers and they didn't understand Chinese, I felt better about letting them look at my poetry because they didn't understand it. And then my course mates would read them in translation, but like the AI translation, and then they gave me pointers, and then I put the book together. And that was how, rubbish become something else.
Wow. And it's fascinating to see how your perception of audience also changes.
Yes. I first started reading the poems really to a white audience because that was the only way I could do it. I couldn't do it to Chinese people who could understand it because I felt they would laugh me out of the room.
It's interesting when you said about building on Daryl's point about lap sap and so on, or rubbish and so on. I'm just reminded in Cantonese when we say la zha sik la zha dai. For example, ang zang chi ang zang da. Yeah, that same idea, right? And which, if we speak about it in a kind of aesthetic or poetic sense as well, right? I mean, and that we can seek influences precisely from all that which is seen as traditionally low art or like proletarian in that sense as well. So yeah, building on that, maybe that. Yeah, Kairu, what would you see are your inspirations like that? And is it based on what you see as your audience? Are you speaking to everyone here, or like especially with Malay language poetry?
Okay, basically this is my second poetry compilation. So usually I would write something that is more, I would say, more complicated, more complex and things like that. But for this book, actually it was inspired when I was teaching in a primary school. So basically when we teach language, especially I think the mother tongue, there's always that part whereby students have to memorize proverbs and things like that, idioms. And I realized that students just memorize without actually understanding it. And in fact, they are not really interested to understand it. And also while teaching folk tales, there's always that folk tales and things like that. I feel that there are certain nuances that is within that folk tale. There are some cynical elements and things like that. So I try to put them all together based on what I observe, based on what I read, and also based on a bit of my background with working with old classics of the Malay language. And so this work is actually how I try to reintroduce those proverbs, those myths, folklores in a more, I would say, contemporary or probably more relevant. And certain things I try to put a critical kind of perspective towards it. Yeah, so basically, this is about, yeah, those are my inspiration for this particular work.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, and that kind of critical view, right, and putting a lens to yourself in that sense, right? Of course, we are approaching the end of this session. I mean, we wish we had more time really to explore, but if at this point in our last 5 to 6 minutes, if we can invite all our poets perhaps to share some concluding thoughts, right, in terms of maybe something that one of our speakers here said or shared today that inspired you, or that an idea just popped up and you'd like to graft that into your own work as well. So yeah, any of our poets would like to share some concluding thoughts? Yeah. So maybe it could go the other way around once again. Yeah.
Okay. For me, I think it's kind of inspiring to hear from. I think I came a bit late, but I managed to hear everybody. To hear how language and poetry have that power to inspire us, to make us think deeper about things, and how we can resonate with everything. And I think, there's a lot more to be done for myself. I think I would be reading more of Singaporean literature, especially from the other languages. Yeah, so I think that's all.
Thank you, Kairu. Clara?
I really enjoyed Prof. Lee's sharing earlier about his poems and how like he had taken these like basic building blocks of Chinese and made poems out of them. And then Zining talked about how like her work was inspired by etymology and how, hey, wait, this is a similar thing that is going on. So I just feel like, you know, as long as there's a love for language and, you know, it doesn't have to be bombastic. It can just really be like the simplest thing like shan, right? Or just, you know, the orchid itself that is so familiar to all Singaporeans so that we don't even care about it anymore. And then just kind of re-examine it and just connect to it and reclaim it. And then that in itself is poetry, I feel.
Thank you, Clara. Yeah. And likewise, Daryl, about concluding thoughts?
I don't have much more to add, except that I'm really honored to have been here. I think what still strikes me is the multilingual aspect of it really, I think, enriched everyone who has been at the reading. We sort of learn from each other, hear other languages being read out, and I wish there was more of this going on. Yeah.
Because it's important decolonial work as well in that sense, right? In really hearing and sharing, and including the original mother tongues is important. And that celebrating our mother tongues and in the conversation, in real, genuine conversation with English language poetry is essential. Like that. Yes, Anthony?
Yeah, I think translation definitely something I'm still thinking about. Definitely what Prof. Lee was sharing with the pictograms, but also what Irfan was sharing with, you know, translation within Chinese languages. And like even at this panel, we had used so many dialects and also contemporary forms of languages that we all live in. I think that's really interesting. And something I thought was interesting as well was I felt like there was a lot of, I heard quite a few poems today that reminded me of fables a little bit, and I thought that was a very interesting kind of space to be in, and like to think about language not just as like the word itself, but also just kind of the whole kind of fabulistic story it's kind of working around. Yeah.
And that we're remaking fables for our own time as well, right? And from multiple linguistic traditions and cultural backgrounds in that sense. Right. I think on that note, that's a lovely way to conclude. Once again, what a fruitful reading and sharing it has been this afternoon. And if we can invite, of course, all our poets later to stay back for photo taking. But can you join me now, everyone, in thanking all our shortlisted poets who have shared here this afternoon. Right. Thank you all so very much for your very rich sharings. Right. And to all our shortlisted poets, we wish you, of course, all the best for the Singapore Literature Prize. Right. And speaking, of course, about the Singapore Literature Prize, right? Just to point out that everyone is, of course, invited to the award ceremony this coming 25th of August at the Victoria Concert Hall. Please, of course, find out more details from this QR code and do RSVP for the event. We really look forward to seeing you there. Right? And of course, just pointing this out on behalf of all our poets and speakers today, if you're interested in getting the books, and we strongly recommend this, please do access the links on the Singapore Book Council website under the Singapore Literature Prize page. And all writers' books, of course, will be on sale, and they're sold by a closet full of books at the award ceremony. All right, so we hope to see everyone there. And thank you all once again to all audiences in person and online for joining us. We'd like to thank our sponsors and program partners as well, to all who have attended and to those online for supporting Singapore literature. So do stay well and stay safe. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. And on behalf of Poetry Festival Singapore, thank you all very much. Right. Thank you. Thank you so much.